Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Krystal and this is Bond Book Reviews, where I put out weekly bookish content. And today it is New Year's and we are going to talk about my top 10 books of 2020. So in 2020, I set my reading goal as 80 books because in 2019, I only read like 47 books. So I was like, I'm going to push it. 2020, I'm going to read 80 books. And as of 5 p.m. yesterday, I read 160 books. So I doubled my reading goal this year and I am absolutely stoked. And it's definitely because of a community like this, where I just see so many books and I just want to read them all. So I just have been reading a lot more and watching less TV, and it's been great for my reading. I've experienced some fantastic books this year, so it was really, really hard to narrow those 160 books down to my top 10. But let's dive in and talk about my top 10 reads of the year. Coming in at number 10 is this one. It is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. So this is the adventures or the trials of Morrigan Crow. A lot of people will know what this book is about, but I will dive into it a little bit for those who don't. So Morrigan Crow is cursed. She is set to die on her 12th birthday, but as she awaits her fate to die, a man named Jupiter North enters her life and takes her on this wild adventure of a ride, and it is phenomenal. The way that Jessica Townsend writes just takes you into this immersive world, and I hadn't felt like this reading a book since Harry Potter. So it was amazing. I'm not comparing it to Harry Potter. In no means, shape or form is it anything like Harry Potter, but I just got the same feeling where I just couldn't put it down and I was really, really excited to keep reading, and it was just fantastic. Obviously, the second and third book in the series are great as well, but this is definitely my number one. The original stands in number 10. Number 9 is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is the kind of book you want to read if you want to read a book that makes you say, what the fuck, every 10 minutes as you're reading a book. It takes you on this phenomenal adventure, and I just found myself constantly saying, what is going on? It's very, very different to Colleen Hoover's usual stories. So for those that have read Colleen Hoover, you know she writes a lot of romance, or as I like to call it, romance with bones, because it's romance that has characters that very, very well written and plot lines that aren't basic, I guess you could say. So with this one, it is very, very different. It is not romance at all. It is very much thriller, I guess you could say, a thriller kind of mystery. So Lowen Ashley is a struggling writer, and she is approached by a gentleman who is the husband of best-selling author Verity Crawford. Now, Verity has a bunch of books that she's meant to finish, but she's currently injured and unable to complete them. So Lowen comes and has to sort through all of her writings in a crazy office to try and figure out how she's going to write these ongoing series. And in doing so, she finds this unfinished autobiography that Verity never expected anyone to read. And it definitely tells some secrets that would devastate and change the fate of the husband's life. So she chooses to keep it a secret, but the more that she discovers and actually starts to fall for the husband, she realizes that letting Verity's secrets in this autobiography come out might actually benefit her, and it just leads to this what the fuck moment at the end. And I still to this day don't know what happened in the end, because it is left with this very, very much audience interpretation kind of vibe, and even the author herself won't answer what was meant to happen. Coming in at number 8 is a very old one actually. This one was published quite a while ago, but it is A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Borkman. Need I say more? It's Frederick Borkman. But this is one of those books that I think you need to be in the right frame of mind and the right time of your life to read. I picked this up in 2010, read 40 pages of it, wasn't liking it, put it down, and picked it back up this year, and it was the perfect time to read it. I think that Ove is the kind of character that everyone has in their life. He's this cranky, grumpy old man that he thinks is surrounded by a bunch of idiots and the world is horrible and he's the only good one left, and through the story you slowly start to learn that he is like every other human and he has a heart and he can be slowly melted. I read this around the time that my own Ove in my life was unwell, and he died the day I finished this book, and it will forever hold a special place in my heart because it reminds me of him very, very much. Coming in at number 7 is Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is one of those reads that changed my reading tastes. I had never read or enjoyed a sci-fi novel before reading this book. This redefines the sci-fi genre, and if Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff write a book together, I will 100% buy it without even questioning. I won't even read the blurb. I won't even care what it's about. If it's got their names on it together, I will buy it. If they've got their names on it individually, I will buy it, because they are masterpieces together, and they create these amazing stories that just defy everything in that genre. As you can see here, it is the winner of a lot of awards, and it deserves them. So the year is 2575, and there is 2 rival companies that are fighting over a planet. Little does the people on that planet know is that they now have to evacuate, and as they're evacuating, there's this massive plague that is mutating with terrifying results. And so now there is this one human by the name of Caddy, and she's hacking into all the data to try and find the truth. She realizes she needs to work together with her ex-boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend that she swore she would never talk to again, to try and save the world. And then there's a kick-ass like. In at number 6 is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This one I actually finished on the 30th of December, and it instantly skyrocketed to my top 10 place. I didn't even have to think about this one. It was fantastic, great representation, brutally written in a way that you can't read this without feeling the whip on your back. It is so immersive and well thought out and well beyond its time and just phenomenal. Kindred follows the story of Dana. She lives in 1976. She is a writer, and one day she's transported back to 1815. There's a boy drowning. His name is Rufus. She saves his life, and then she is assumed a slave because she is black, and she's been transported back to time where slavery is very, very much prevalent. And each time she has her life threatened in 1815, she then travels back to 1976. But then every time that Rufus's life is threatened, she's dragged back to 1815. And each time that she goes back and sees Rufus, she realizes that her life in 1976 may actually be over before she even knows it, and she finds herself stuck in 1815. The thing I like about this book is that Octavia E. Butler writes a groundbreaking story that follows these 2 people that are bound by blood and ancestry but are completely different in the way that they've had to live their lives, and it's just phenomenal. Number 5. Coming in at number 5 is actually a Bookstagram author that I met, and her name is Nick Reeves. She is Nick Reeve Writes on Instagram. I will link her down below, as well as the copy to her book if you want to go and check it out. The story is Crimson Hearts. Now, Crimson Hearts is a story of grief and coming back from grief and learning to go through the stages of grief, but it's done in a way that every single reader will take something different from it, depending on what experiences they've had in their life. And if you want to read a book where the author's heart is in every word, then this is the book for you. I literally could not read this book without crying. Every time I sat down to read, I would cry. I could only read this book in the comfort of my own bedroom or my own house, because I knew that every single time I picked it back up, I was going to re-feel those emotions. And I loved every second of it. So if you're looking for a book that is from a self-published author that has romance with bones, with grief and realisticness and heart in every word, then I 100% recommend picking this one up. Number 4 is about, I'm going to say about 15 years too late, but I'm going to put it on here anyways because I read it in 2020. And that is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. I don't know what happened to me when I was a teenager and when this book came out, but I didn't even know it existed. I had never heard of it. I was a reader, I just didn't hear about this book, and I probably didn't even hear this book existed until about 2 years ago when I joined the Bookstagram kind of booktubey community and started to learn about all these extra books that I didn't really know about. And this was one of them that everybody raved about. And I was so excited to pick this one up for Gav's readathon. And it was everything that everyone promised me it was going to be and more. And I 100% am on the side of this is better than Harry Potter. If you want to at me at that, for that, go for gold. But this is 100% better than Harry Potter. So this follows the story of Percy. He is a half-blood. He is half god, half human. And he just goes on a bunch of cool adventures. And I just think it's phenomenal. And just read it. I mean, everyone knows what this is about. There's no point me going on about this for another 5 minutes about what it's about. I'm just going to tell you, it's good. Read it if you haven't already. And if you have read it, you'll know why it's on this list. Number 3, of course, has to be Aurora Rising. I'm sorry, I'm a J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman fan. I will scream it from the rooftops that they can do no wrong in my eyes and they are autobiographies for me. If you followed any of my vlogs on my channel for a while or my Instagram, you'll know that I love them wholeheartedly, and they will most likely, any book I read from them will end up on my top 10 list each year. This one only beat Illuminae because I have recently read Aurora Burning, and I haven't read the sequel to Illuminae. So I think that's the only reason why it's a little bit above Illuminae. Reading Illuminae, I had a more insane reaction and immersive experience, but I preferred the characters in Aurora Rising and Aurora Burning. So that's why I think this one keeps it at the post a little bit. So this follows the story of Tyler. It's in the very distant future, 2300, and there's a bunch of graduates who are graduating from Aurora Academy, and they get to finally pick their squad. Now Tyler, who is the top of his class and is meant to get the best squad ever, ends up being very distracted on the day of selection and ends up late. So he ends up with all of the dregs and all of the bad people that are unwanted in his squad. But that isn't even his worst problem. The worst problem is the fact that while he was distracted, he discovered a ship which had one lone survivor on it. Her name is Aurora O'Malley, and she is going to cause him a whole lot of trouble. And she just might be the catalyst to set a war that is a million years in the making. And if you want yourself some witty characters, some badass adventures, and a little bit of romance thrown in, but done well, definitely pick up this one. Again, it totally changes the sci-fi genre, so don't balk at this just because it's sci-fi. Because it's sci-fi fantasy done well. So don't gawk at the fact that it's sci-fi, because it is very, very different to any sci-fi I've ever read. Coming in at number 2 is Hangman by Jack Heath, which I currently don't have a copy of because I've lent it out. I loved it that much. So I'll just talk about Hunter by Jack Heath. This is the second book in the series, and very much a close tie with Hangman. This follows the story of Timothy Blake. Timothy Blake is a Dexter meets Lucifer, I guess is probably the only way you could describe him as a character. He is a FBI consultant who eats people. I mean, it's no spoiler, we all know who he is now, but pretty much he's an FBI agent who eats people, and he is phenomenal and fantastic. And this book and the rest in the series are nail-biting and phenomenal, and just read it. Now for number 1. It wasn't hard to figure out what number 1 was going to be. Like, I appreciate every single book in those top 10 so far, and I 100% have made every single one of those authors auto-buy authors for me. They were all phenomenal, and they all definitely deserve to be read. But the one that ends up number 1 for me on my list for 2020 is a book that I will never forget, that every time I look at it, I smile and relive the experience that I experienced reading this book. And that is Kristen Hanna, The Great Alone. The Great Alone takes you on an adventure to Alaska, where Cora and her recently returned Vietnam vet husband decide to uproot their daughter and move to Alaska, knowing absolutely nothing about how to live in the Alaskan wilderness. And it follows the story of this family discovering how to live in the wilderness, and there's love and there's alcoholism and there's hard times and there's just everything you need out of a book. And Kristen Hanna does such good justice to this story, writing in these like elegant prose and in the way she creates her characters. You just can't help but love and empathize with them. And it is definitely going to be one that I reread multiple times. 10 great books. Go and read them. My top 10 of 2020. Very much diverse read. I mean, we've got historical fiction, we've got thrillers, we've got sci-fi, we've got fantasy, we've got representation and POC, we've got romance, we've got contemporary, and we've got, you know, YA middle grade. Got you covered. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe for new videos each week. And until next time, happy reading. Also, I have a Twitter now, so go and find me over there where I'll be putting out Twitter polls for different video ideas, reading ideas, and more.